I wanted to ask you, there's a great comment here that I think is interesting from Jay, who's with us live here on YouTube, and they're making a comparison to football, Eric. And I know you've admitted you're not necessarily the biggest football team or football fan, but you know who the biggest team is. Like if you had to guess just revenues and fan base and all that, just using your business brain, who do you think the biggest team in the NFL is?
Money wise, I don't know.
Yes.
It's going to be a New York team, right?
It's the Dallas Cowboys, and it's been the
Okay.
Dallas Cowboys forever. They're positioned as America's team. And, there's lots of licensing agreements that the NFL has that Jerry Jones has decided the Dallas Cowboys are not going to participate in. They're just going to do their own thing. And as a result, they've become the most profitable franchise by a lot. And Jay, who's with us here live, says Tony Khan is the Jerry Jones of wrestling. He's got his fingers in too much stuff. He's got to hire some real writers for storylines, etc. Tony needs to take a back seat. Now, I bring that up to you because I am friends with a lot of hardcore Cowboys fans. Our producer, stupid ass Dave Silva, he is among them, and almost all of them will tell you the biggest problem with the Cowboys is Jerry Jones. They don't have problems with personnel or players or stadiums. And when they have coaching problems, it's because the owner, Jerry Jones, picked the wrong coach, or he didn't allow that coach to pick his own groceries. And he was a little too involved in being the general manager. And even Jerry Jones, when he was asked about this recently, he says, "Hey, I have no intent to retire. I bought this to do until I couldn't do it anymore. And that's what I intend to do. And I'm going to do it with my family." And I found that interesting. What do you think of this comparison that Tony Khan is the Jerry Jones of wrestling? I'd never heard that before.
Do you watch the new series Landman?
I do, yes. He made a cameo in there.
He made a cameo and he talked about this very thing with Billy Bob Thornton, or at least part of it. He made it clear in that cameo that he bought this team because it was his dream to run it with his family. And it's a little bit like, it's a vanity project. It's a big muckerfather, and it's profitable. So there's the difference between Jerry and Tony. But the over-involvement, absolutely. It's a hobby for Tony. That's what this is. It is a vanity project / hobby. And it's reaching all of Tony's personal goals. Apparently. He's not under any financial pressure, and he doesn't want to give up any control. So he's doing exactly what he wants to do. And if that's the only parameter, if that's the only goal, is that Tony's having fun and he can afford to have that kind of fun, it is what it is. I've kind of given up. I don't really have much hope anymore. And just looking at it for what it is. It's one person's dream job that he was able to fund and create. That's what it is. It won't be anything different than that ever. I don't think, like Jerry Jones, that he'll turn it into one of the most successful franchises in the industry. That's never going to happen. Clearly.
Well, nobody's saying that about the Cowboys right now. I mean, even Troy Aikman was on TV this past week when people were saying, "Oh, this is one of the most coveted jobs," because the Cowboys just let go of their coach, or Mike McCarthy's not going to be back. So the Cowboys are looking for a new coach. And Eric, the speculation is, or it's not even a speculation, Deion Sanders says he called him. And there's lots of people in the NFL world who are saying, yeah, because no real coach wants to go work for Jerry Jones. So you've got to go to these sideshows like Deion Sanders. I'm not saying he is, but that is the narrative out there, that he's not a serious NFL head coach yet. Deion Sanders, that is. So, yeah, even Troy Aikman's on TV saying this is not a coveted job anymore. And he's, Hall of Fame, legendary Super Bowl winning quarterback with the Cowboys, saying in a loud and clear voice, not anymore. It's interesting to think about what's next for the Cowboys, but also to hear someone make that comparison for Tony Khan, because that never even crossed my mind.
Yeah, no, I've heard the criticism of Jerry Jones for years now, that he doesn't let his coaches coach and he's too involved in the game and he's trying to call plays from from the suite and things like that. So that narrative about Jerry Jones is been out there forever, and everybody knows that Tony's the head booker, he's the president, CEO, head of creative, head of wrestling operate. He's got about 6 titles, and as long as that's the case, you're probably going to have the same problem with AEW that you have with finding a winning season for the Dallas Cowboys. But if you're Deion Sanders, do you take that job going in, knowing you don't really have any NFL experience? It takes time. It's a different situation than Colorado State or wherever he's coaching. Do you go into that job for 2 or 3 years knowing it's not the best job in the world, but you're going to make a name for yourself in the NFL? Get that experience.
I don't know. I think Dion might be exposed there. I'd keep having fun in college, and
I would too.
ride that out a little while. Hey, we're watching a pretty fun thing when you think about it with the benefit of hindsight. 3 Georgia boys, Diamond Dallas Page, coming to the ring, coming through the crowd, and waiting for him in the ring. Scott Steiner and Buff Bagwell. I think you and I both really enjoyed their act together. We saw Buff paired with Luger, and we saw Buff paired with Scotty Riggs, and we saw Buff paired with Too Cold Scorpio. We saw Buff paired with Scott Steiner. And the Scott Steiner pairing with Buff, I think, is my favorite. And I don't even know why exactly. What say you?
I think so, because it was kind of like it was a contrasting characters. I mean, Buff was put together, obviously, but Buff was the
Hype man.
the smart ass, kind of cocky little cute boy, and Scott Steiner was a killer, and that contrast made them interesting.
Little did we know. Oh, and Little Nate is the ref. Man,
What a career this guy's had, right?
Still doing his thing today on WWE programming. It's wild.
Look at this. You know what else is wild is this crowd. It's a good looking crowd. I mean, they're not only is it look good on camera, but they're very, very into what we're doing.
And what's interesting too, Eric, is you do have majority men there, but man, you got a lot of ladies in the crowd. You got a lot of kids in the crowd. I think that's interesting to take a look at, just the makeup of the crowds, because they've changed through the years for sure.
It tells you everything, right? If it's a testicle festival, kind of like ECW was, it's a niche product. AEW has a little nichiness to it in that regard. WCW certainly had it for a long time until 97, 98, and it became more family, more women, better looking women. Better looking women usually means more guys, more women. It was kind of like a fun spiral. It was a life spiral instead of a death spiral. But you're right, man. The composition of your crowd tells you just about everything you need to know. It says a lot to your advertisers, too. It says a lot to your advertisers beyond just what they get out of a Nielsen guide.
We're watching Scott Steiner here wrestle Diamond Dallas Page. They're not yet wrestling each other for the world title, but that's what the world title picture is going to look like in the coming years here in WCW. This is going to be a pay-per-view main event before you know it. But recently, we've heard a lot from Scott Steiner. He did a few interviews talking about his son, who's been at Jacksonville State University playing football, and he has expressed interest, his son has, in getting in the family business. Of course, he knows what his dad did and what his uncle did, and now he sees what his cousin, Brian Breaker, is doing, and he's expressed interest in doing stuff with WWE. Scott Steiner has even come out and said that he's buried the hatchet with Triple H. Once upon a time, they didn't get along that great, but they've agreed to let bygones be bygones, and he's excited that his son is going to follow in his footsteps. It certainly looks like he's going to be a part of the WWE ID program and then later developmental. We've seen what Braun Breaker has been doing. How pumped are you now to see that? Well, there's Rick Steiner's son. Oh, what do you know?
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Your son.
I love that, man. That lineage is awesome, and the talent there. Now, of course, I don't know what Scott's son looks like, but Braun Breaker, man, is there anybody in his peer group, his age group, that are as exciting as he is, that have that much potential? If there are, I'm not sure who it is right now.
Man, how wild is it to think about the next generation of the Steiner brothers perhaps we're going to see that. I can't wait